I'm Lena Whitlow, and I hadn't planned on going to my sister's baby shower. The invitation had come in the mail 3 weeks ago. Pink envelope, glitter-dusted lettering, a tiny baby bottle sticker sealing the flap. I'd left it on the counter for 2 days before I even opened it. Not because I forgot, just couldn't bring myself to see her handwriting. Marin is 3 years younger than me. Always was the type who didn't need to ask for attention. It just moved to her naturally, like iron to a magnet. And I guess I'd stopped being resentful of that a long time ago. Or maybe I told myself I did. Anyway, I RSVP'd no. Gave the excuse that Joel's parents were coming into town. That was a lie. They weren't. I just couldn't imagine walking into that pink circus and sitting under balloon arches while they passed around tiny socks and ultrasound photos. I couldn't fake a smile through that, not again. Not after everything. But Friday morning came, and I stood in my kitchen staring out the window at that gray, still sky. My eyes landed on the little white candle I keep on the sill. It flickered just once, though the air was still. That thing never flickers. Not unless someone walks by. I took it as a nudge. Maybe something wanted me to go. Or maybe I was just tired of being alone in my own house with the memories. Either way, I texted Marin, told her I changed my mind and I'd bring a pie. She sent back 3 hearts and a baby emoji. I baked a peach crumble the kind Mom used to make when we were girls. Drove across town in silence. No music, just the low hum of tires and the tapping of my fingers on the steering wheel. The neighborhood where Marin lives is one of those new developments cookie-cutter houses with cheerful wreaths and seasonal flags. But it wasn't the wreath that caught my eye. It was the car. Joel's. Gray Altima. Front passenger side bumper with a scratch he keeps forgetting to fix. Virginia plates a little smudged with dust. Parked way down the driveway tucked near the side gate like it didn't want to be seen. My first thought was maybe he left something for her. A package. Diapers maybe? But I hadn't seen him load anything into the car that morning. And he told me he had a long meeting today. I got out of my car slowly. My boots hit the gravel with a sound that felt suddenly too loud. I walked toward the porch, but something, maybe instinct, maybe something older, pulled me to the side yard. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Not just Marin's. I mean, yes, it was her laugh, light and unfiltered, the kind of laugh she only used when she was completely at ease. But then I heard a man's voice, low, familiar. Joel. I froze near the trellis where the vines curl up the posts. The garden door was cracked open just a little, like someone had come through and not pulled it shut all the way. You always say that, Joel's voice. Amused. Comfortable. Marin. Because it's true. You don't remember half the stuff we talked about that summer. Joel quieter? I remember more than you think. Then silence. I stood there a full minute, maybe longer. My heart didn't race. It just slowed. Like it knew something before I did. I turned away before I could hear more. Walked back to my car and sat behind the wheel pie, still in the passenger seat. What was he doing here? Why hadn't he told me? The questions didn't come all at once. They unfurled slowly, like fog curling in from the edge of the woods. I watched the front door. Imagined them both walking out laughing, seeing me in the car. What would he say? What would she? I looked down at my hands. My fingernails were still stained with flour. I brushed them against my jeans, then picked up the pie. I told myself maybe I misunderstood. Maybe he stopped by and was just leaving. Maybe it's not what I think. But I already knew. I opened the car door, stood up, took a breath that felt heavier than it should have. Then I walked inside. The first thing I noticed was the pink. Ribbons tied to the backs of chairs, pastel garlands strung from the ceiling paper lanterns in soft rose and blush. It looked like a strawberry milkshake had exploded in the living room. Marin had always had a flair for this kind of thing. Big gestures, curated details. I stepped inside and felt like I'd walked into someone else's dream. One I didn't belong in. She saw me before I could say anything. Her face lit up like the candles on her gender reveal cake. "Lena, you made it." She rushed over and hugged me. Hard. Too hard. The pie between us tilted awkwardly, and I had to pull back before it slipped. "Brought Mom's crumble," I said. My voice sounded thin. She took it and placed it on the table with the rest of the desserts. Then she turned to say something else, but stopped. Her eyes shifted behind me. Just for a second, a flicker, like she expected someone else to come in after me. But no one did. Joel was gone. I stood in the foyer and listened. I strained for any sign, the sound of his car pulling away, his voice drifting from another room. Nothing. Just music playing from a Bluetooth speaker on the kitchen counter. Some acoustic cover of a pop song I didn't recognize. A few women I hadn't seen in years walked over and said hello. One of them was our cousin from Chesapeake, the one who always wore too much perfume and asked too many questions. "Lena, you look great. Still teaching?" I nodded, though it wasn't true. I hadn't gone back after the second miscarriage. Not officially. I did some substitute work last year, but it wasn't the same. The smell of school glue and whiteboard markers made my stomach turn now. I told her I'd taken a break. She smiled like she didn't know what else to say. Marin started opening gifts around 1:30. I sat in the corner with a glass of lemonade watching. Her hands moved like a dancer's, graceful, confident. She held up onesies, diaper bags, bibs that said, "Little Miracle." Everyone clapped and cooed. I just smiled. Every now and then she looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable behind her eyes. Like she was checking to see if I knew. But I kept my face still. I thought of Joel again. Wondered where he'd gone. Had he slipped out when he saw my car? Had he left through the back gate, driven off before I made it inside? I pictured him and Marin in that garden, standing closer than they should have. Maybe she touched his arm. Maybe he let her. A woman next to me leaned over and whispered, "She looks so happy." I nodded. After the gifts, there were cupcakes. One had Baby G written in cursive icing. Another had a tiny fondant pacifier. I didn't eat any. My stomach was twisting itself into knots. I helped clean up because it gave my hands something to do. I stacked plates, wiped frosting from tablecloths, poured half-full drinks down the sink. Marin came up beside me and handed me a bundle of tissue paper. "I think this one's yours," she said, smiling too wide. I took it. It was the candle I'd made her years ago, white wax with dried lavender pressed inside from when I was obsessed with doing things by hand. I'd given it to her for Christmas one year. She must have saved it. "Thanks," I said. She looked like she wanted to say something more. But someone called her name from the hallway, and just like that, she floated away again. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. By 4 people started leaving. Hugs, photos, promises to get together soon. Marin hugged me again at the door. "Thanks for coming," she said. Really, her eyes were glassy, but not from joy. Or maybe not just joy. I didn't ask anything, didn't press. I just nodded. Driving home, I kept glancing at the seat beside me. The candle sat there in a crumpled nest of pink tissue. I could still smell the lavender. I thought about how her laugh had sounded in the garden, easy, unguarded, and how Joel's voice had matched its rhythm too perfectly. I thought about how he hadn't said a word about it when he left for work that morning. About how his shoes were still in the hall when I got back that evening. About how he didn't ask how the shower went, didn't mention Marin, didn't mention anything at all. just sat on the couch watching something on his phone with the volume turned down low. I stood in the doorway waiting for him to notice me. He didn't. And in that quiet, I felt something split, not loud, not dramatic, just the smallest crack down the center of me. It didn't bleed, but it stung. The next morning, I stared at the spoon in my cereal bowl long after the milk had gone warm. Joel was already gone. Or at least his car was. No note, no message. The silence in our house used to feel comfortable. Lately, it pressed in like a wool blanket in summer, heavy, suffocating, uninvited. I thought about what I'd heard the day before. What I didn't hear, too. The easy way his voice wrapped around hers. How he'd vanished before I walked inside. Not a trace of him left, no crumpled napkin, no coffee mug, not even the faint trace of his cologne. I told myself again, maybe he just dropped something off. But the lie rang hollow now. By noon, I found myself driving back across town. I didn't even text Marin this time. I just showed up at her door. She answered in leggings and a sweatshirt that barely stretched over her belly. Her hair was tied back. Her cheeks looked flushed, like she'd just been crying or laughing too hard. "Hey," she said, surprised, not thrilled. "I forgot my baking dish," I said. "I didn't. I hadn't brought one." She stepped aside. "Sure. Come in." The house was quieter now. The balloons were deflated, drooping like tired lungs. The table had been cleared. All the pink had been packed away. "I put it in the kitchen," she said. "Thought you might come by." I followed her in. My shoes felt too loud on her hardwood floor. "Want some tea?" she asked. "No," I said. "Just the dish." She handed it to me, still spotless. I waited. She didn't say anything. I cleared my throat. "Was Joel here yesterday?" Marin looked down at the sink. "What you looked behind me when I walked in. Like you were expecting someone else." She rubbed her arm. "Oh. No, I mean maybe. I thought maybe you brought a +1 or something." "I don't have a +1, I said." Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter. I didn't push yet. Just stood there watching her try to breathe like nothing was happening. Then I said it. I heard him. In the garden. Before I came in. She looked up. Fast. Eyes wide. I waited. Let the silence stretch. She blinked once. Twice. Then said, "We were talking. That's all. How long has that been happening?" She bit her bottom lip. Then finally, the mask cracked. "It wasn't planned," she said quietly. There it was. I leaned back against the doorframe. "How long, Marin?" She walked to the table and sat down like her legs couldn't hold her. After everything that happened, we started talking more." He reached out to check on me. "We didn't mean for anything to happen. But it did." She nodded. "I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. I trusted you." I said, not raising my voice. I trusted him too. "But with you, it feels like something worse." She looked at me, her eyes red now. "I didn't plan to get pregnant, Lena. It just..." I cut her off. Don't make it sound like an accident. You're having his child. That's not a fender bender." She looked away. We sat in that silence for what felt like a year. "You always made it hard to get close to you," she said suddenly. I felt my throat tighten. "Is that your excuse?" She didn't answer, just stared at the floor. I set the dish down on the table gently. "I'm done," I said, with what she whispered, with pretending we're still sisters. I walked out without another word. The sound of the door closing behind me was too soft for the kind of ending that moment deserved. On the drive home, I thought about all the birthdays, Christmases, the nights we stayed up as girls, whispering under blankets the way she used to braid my hair. I tried to fit those memories into what I'd just heard. They didn't match. The sun was setting as I turned onto our street. Long shadows stretched across the sidewalk. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there, keys still in the ignition, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. I remembered the candle on the sill. I hadn't lit it in days. I stepped inside the house. Joel's jacket was hanging on the hook like always, his boots by the door. He was in the living room scrolling his phone, face blank. I didn't say anything, neither did he. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer, took out a match. I struck it, held the flame to the candle's wick. It flared up. The house was still, but now the silence wasn't shared. It was mine. That night, I waited until after dinner to ask. Joel had made pasta. He always cooked when he wanted to smooth something over. Not that he admitted anything, but his hands were quiet when they stirred the sauce. His shoulders hunched a little more than usual. He didn't hum like he normally did when he chopped garlic. He passed me a plate like we were just two people sharing an ordinary evening. Like I hadn't stood in my sister's kitchen 12 hours earlier and felt the ground shift. We ate in silence, forks scraping ceramic. When I finally spoke, my voice felt like it belonged to someone else. I saw your car at Marin's yesterday. He didn't look up at first. Then, slowly, he did. His mouth pressed into that familiar crooked line, half confusion, half defense. I dropped off something he said. Diapers? She asked. I nodded once. You didn't mention it. He shrugged. I didn't think it mattered. She's my sister. I know that. I heard you. In the garden. His jaw tensed. Just slightly. Enough. What exactly did you hear? Enough. He pushed his plate away, leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms. You think I'm sleeping with her? I don't have to think? He stood up, then walked to the sink, started rinsing dishes like it was a normal Tuesday, and we were having a minor disagreement. You always do this, he said quietly. Do what? Overthink? Spiral. Fill in blanks that weren't there. I set my fork down slowly. You've been seeing her behind my back. You think I'm inventing that? She was going through a lot, he said. So were you. I was just trying to be there for both of you. I let out a soft laugh, bitter. You were there for her, all right. He turned off the faucet. It wasn't like that at first, he said. We talked. We vented. It got complicated. I should have told you, but I didn't want to make things worse. You didn't want to make things worse? I repeated like tasting spoiled milk. He looked at me then. Really looked. And behind all the excuses and fatigue, there was something else, cowardice. You think I haven't noticed the way things changed between us? He asked. After the miscarriages, after you quit your job, you've barely looked at me the same. I stood up slowly. My chair didn't even creak. Don't you dare use that against me. I'm not, he said softer. I'm just saying it wasn't all perfect before either. Maybe you didn't notice that. I noticed everything I said. Every night I sat in bed pretending I was fine while you scrolled your phone. Every time you left for work early and came home smelling like a different laundry detergent. He flinched at that. The room felt colder suddenly, like a draft had crept under the door. I glanced at the candle on the windowsill. The flame was small, struggling. She's pregnant, Joel. He turned away. So it is yours. His silence filled the space between us thick as smoke. I didn't cry. I thought I might. I wanted to, but my body was still, my hands steady. I want the truth, I said. He took a long breath. Then it happened once, maybe twice. It wasn't a thing. Not like that. But now there's a baby. And no version of this story makes that go away. He nodded slowly, his face pale. I picked up our plates. stacked them in the sink. The candle's flame finally steadied a small, thin line of gold. Joel leaned against the counter like he couldn't carry the weight of what he'd said. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he whispered. "Neither did I said. "But here we are." We didn't talk again that night. He fell asleep on the couch. I stayed in the kitchen, wiping down a clean counter, watching the candle burn itself lower and lower. I thought about the first time I met him, a gallery opening in Norfolk. He spilled wine on his own shoes, trying to impress me. I remembered the way he said my name back then, soft, almost reverent. Now it sounded like something he avoided. The silence between us wasn't new. But now it had edges. That night, just before midnight, the candle went out on its own. No breeze, no movement. Just a thin wisp of smoke curling toward the ceiling. Marin texted me the next morning, like nothing had happened. "Can you help me rearrange the nursery? I keep changing my mind about the crib wall." I stared at her message for a full minute, phone balanced on my palm like it might burn me. My thumb hovered over the screen. I almost typed, "Ask Joel," but I didn't. Instead, I replied, "Sure. I'll come by after lunch." There was a kind of numbness to everything by then. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel heartbreak. It was quieter than that, like standing in snow. Cold, muffled, distant. I showed up at her house with a bag of lemon scones I didn't remember buying. She smiled like we were still little girls playing house in Mom's living room. "Thanks again," she said. I've just been staring at the same 4 walls all morning. The nursery was a soft, sage green. Neutral, understated. She'd hung a mobile with wooden clouds above the crib. There was a rocking chair in the corner that looked antique, but I knew it wasn't. Marin had always liked new things that felt old. She handed me a swatch book. "Do you think this blue is too cold for the curtains?" I didn't answer right away. I was looking at the bookshelf, half stacked with folded onesies and little animal books with thick cardboard pages. "It's fine," I said. She smiled again. That same smile she gave when she was hiding something behind her back as a kid. "Want water or anything?" she asked. I shook my head. "I'm fine." Then her phone rang, and she stepped out into the hallway. I could hear her voice low, half whispering. She didn't say a name, but I knew. I sat down on the edge of the rocking chair. It creaked under my weight. That's when I noticed the drawer. Second one down on the changing table. Left slightly ajar, a green corner peeking out. I didn't mean to look. I didn't come here planning to dig through her things. But once my fingers touched the leather spine, it was already too late. A journal, dark green, soft cover. Her handwriting curled across the first page like a vine. I never thought I'd fall for him. I stared at that sentence. My chest went still. The entries didn't name him at first, just he. But I didn't need her to spell it out. He understands me in a way no one else ever has. We met again by accident, just for coffee. But it didn't feel wrong. Not then. Page after page. Carefully dated. Some with tiny sketches in the margins. A blue button. A slice of pie. A crescent moon. And then Joel kissed me today. I wanted to stop him. I didn't. I stopped reading. My hands were shaking, but my eyes were dry. The date at the top of that page was from 3 years ago. 3 years. We were still trying for children then. Still hopeful. Still something like a marriage. I heard Marin's voice in the hallway again, laughing softly, telling someone she'd call them later. I slid the journal back where I found it and closed the drawer. When she came back into the room, she was smiling. Her cheeks were flushed. "Sorry, that was just the doula." "Of course," I said. We rearranged the crib wall, moved it to the opposite side of the room. I held the tape measure while she marked the floor with chalk. I didn't say anything else about what I'd seen. But I couldn't stop thinking about the date. 3 years ago. That meant it wasn't a mistake. Wasn't some post-miscarriage emotional affair. This had roots. This had time. And Joel had lied to me fully deliberately, not just by omission, but by architecture. He had built another life piece by piece while pretending to fix ours. I finished helping her by 4. We hugged at the door, her belly pressed lightly against mine. "Thanks again," she said. I didn't answer. Driving home, I couldn't remember the turns. I kept seeing those lines in the journal, hearing the way she'd written about him, about my husband. I wondered if he'd ever written about me like that. I doubted it. The candle on my windowsill was unlit when I got home. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Joel was still at work, or somewhere else. I walked upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and pressed my palm flat against the mattress. I imagined the indentation he left every night. Then, I imagined it gone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I felt something settle into place. A decision. A weight. A quiet promise to myself. I didn't know what I would do next. But I knew this: I would not let them keep writing my story. I didn't ask about the due date. I didn't have to. The next time I saw the baby calendar hanging in Marin's hallway, it had 2 pink hearts drawn over August 17th. One for her, one I assumed for Joel. That was 12 days away. I stared at it while she fetched me a sweater I'd loaned her years ago and never thought I'd see again. When she handed it to me, her eyes flicked toward the calendar, like she was daring me to mention it. I didn't, but I counted backwards in my head as I drove home. I did the math. I remembered exactly where Joel and I had been when that child must have been conceived. We were in counseling, trying again. I'd just started tracking my ovulation with little strips I kept in the bathroom drawer. Joel pretended to care, even helped me draw up a schedule on the fridge, and all the while he was planting roots somewhere else. It was astonishing in a way, the precision with which he divided himself. I imagined him sitting beside me on the couch at Dr. Hallberg's office, talking about transparency, honesty, about healing. I wondered if he washed his hands between touching both of us. That night, I opened the bathroom drawer and pulled out one of the old ovulation strips I hadn't touched in months. I held it between my fingers like a relic. I remembered the way I used to sit on the edge of the tub, waiting for the lines to appear. The way I used to hope the second line would show. Then the way I used to pray it wouldn't. Hope curdled after a while. I tossed the strip in the trash and shut the drawer. The next morning, Joel was already gone. I didn't ask where. I sat on the porch with my coffee and watched the clouds roll in from the west. The candle on the windowsill inside had burned itself down to a stub. I didn't replace it. Not yet. At noon, I got a group text from Marin with a baby bump photo. Her hand rested gently on her stomach. She'd captioned it, "Little one almost here." So grateful. Mama Glow Joel loved the message. I stared at that tiny heart icon on my screen like it was a bullet. Later that night, I asked him, "What happens when the baby's born?" He blinked. "What do you mean? Do you plan to be there? In the delivery room in their lives?" He shifted on the couch, rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know yet. I haven't figured it all out. She's due in 12 days. He looked down at his hands. "You're in this, Joel. You're in this whether you want to be or not. I didn't mean for it to get this far." I stood up. "I think you did. Maybe not on purpose. But you let it. You let her believe you were a partner. You let me believe I still had a husband." He didn't respond. "Do you love her?" I asked. He looked up slowly. That pause, half a second too long, was the answer. I nodded. "Do you love the child?" He looked away. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I laughed then, a hollow, brittle sound I didn't recognize coming from my own mouth. That's the thing, Joel. You never see anything until it's right in front of you. And even then, you blink. I walked upstairs without saying anything else. I didn't slam doors, didn't throw anything. But when I reached the bedroom, I packed a small bag. Just the guest room essentials, pajamas, toothbrush, one of my old sketchbooks I hadn't opened in over a year. The guest room smelled faintly of cedar. The walls were pale yellow, a color I used to love. It looked like a room someone had forgotten to finish decorating. It fit me. I made the bed, set my bag on the floor, sat on the edge, and let the silence take its shape around me. The hallway light flickered through the crack in the door. I thought of that calendar in Marin's hallway. The pink hearts. I imagined her in the hospital holding the baby against her chest. Joel beside her beaming, and I saw myself nowhere in the frame. I wasn't angry. Not in the way people imagine rage. It was something colder, something slower, something that hollowed out the center of me like wind against stone. I took the candle stub from my purse and set it on the bedside table. I didn't light it. Not yet, but I would. Soon. It was raining when I drove to Marin's house the next day. Not heavy, just a slow, steady drizzle that blurred the windshield and made the road shimmer like wet ribbon. I didn't use the wipers at first. I just watched the water trail down in lazy veins. I'd thought about canceling. I'd even typed the text, "Can't make it, maybe next week," but I didn't send it. Instead, I put on the dark green sweater I'd gotten back from her a few days ago. It still smelled faintly like her detergent. I wore it anyway. When she opened the door, she looked tired, barefaced, the way she used to look when we were kids and she'd sneak into my room after a nightmare. "Come in," she said softly. The house was quiet. No music, no TV, just the hum of the fridge and the rain tapping against the windows. "I made tea," she offered. "Chamomile." I nodded. We sat in the kitchen across from each other like strangers on a train. She poured 2 mugs, sliding one across the table without meeting my eyes. "I thought you might want to talk," she said finally. I watched the steam curl from the mug. "Talk about what?" Her lip twitched. "Don't do that. Do what? Pretend you don't know what this is." I looked at her then. Really looked. She had that same face from childhood, too many emotions sitting just under the skin. "You're pregnant with my husband's child," I said quietly. "I'm not pretending." She flinched, like I'd slapped her. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "You keep saying that." "Do you think it makes it better?" "No," she whispered. "But it's true." I leaned forward slightly. "You wrote about him in that journal." Her eyes widened, a soft intake of breath. "I wasn't looking for it. It was just there." She swallowed hard. "You read it enough." She went still. Her hand dropped from the mug. "That was from a long time ago," she said. "Things were different then." "You mean I was broken and you stepped in?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, "but you did." The rain ticked against the glass. "You were always so hard to reach, Lena. Even when we were kids, you'd disappear into your sketchbooks, your silence. I needed someone who saw me." "Joel did." "You mean he let you feel needed?" I said. "There's a difference." Her hand moved to her stomach instinctively. A reflex. Protective. I stared at the gesture, the small life underneath it. I said the thing I hadn't let myself say out loud until now. "Do you love him?" She didn't answer right away. "Then I think I love who I am when I'm with him." I let out a slow breath. "That's not love," I said. "That's a mirror." She blinked. I pushed the mug away and stood up. My hands were steady. My voice didn't shake. "I came here to say goodbye." Lena, you're not my sister anymore. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. I don't hate you, I said. But I can't keep pretending this is something we come back from. She stood too, her eyes glossy now. I don't know how to fix it, she said. You can't, I replied. That's the point. I turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. There's a part of me that wanted to beg you to apologize, to make it all small enough to forgive. But that part of me died the moment I read your words. She nodded, biting her lower lip. I'll always be sorry, she whispered. But sorry didn't change what she was carrying inside her. It didn't undo the nights they shared while I slept alone in a bed we used to dream in. I opened the door. The rain had stopped. The sky was a washed-out gray, like the world had just wrung itself dry. I stepped outside and didn't look back. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I turned the radio on and let the static fill the car until a song found its way through. Something soft. Piano. A woman's voice whispering things I couldn't quite hear. I parked in the driveway and sat there, fingers still curled around the steering wheel. Then I walked inside and headed straight to the guest room. The candle was waiting. I lit it. Not for her, not for him. For me. The flame caught immediately, steady, bright. I watched it dance and said the word out loud quietly. Sister. It sounded like something from another life. The first night in the guest room felt like sleeping inside someone else's life. The sheets were stiff from disuse. The pillow smelled faintly of cedar and detergent, like the linen closet had breathed it into the fabric over time. There was no groove in the mattress where a body should go no dip from years of sleeping beside someone. It was flat, impersonal. I lay there with my arms at my sides, staring at the ceiling, listening for Joel's footsteps in the hallway. He didn't come. At 2:14 a.m., I got up, made tea, and sat by the kitchen window in silence. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I watched the candle flicker low, a stub now. One corner of the label was peeling up, revealing the glass underneath. I thought about buying a new one, but something about the slow dying of this one felt honest. In the morning, Joel was in the kitchen before me. He looked at me, his hand hovering over the coffee pot. You slept in the other room. I did. He didn't ask why. He poured himself a mug and took it to the dining room. Didn't speak again. The new rhythm was established in a single heartbeat. No fights, no tears, just space, and the unspoken agreement not to fill it. We were two people occupying parallel lives in the same blueprint. I started keeping a small stack of my clothes in the dresser across from the guest bed. Little by little. At first, it was just a sweater. Then my walking shoes. Then my earrings placed carefully on the dish I'd made in a pottery class before everything fell apart. There was no official move, just a soft erosion of my presence from our bedroom. He noticed. Of course he did, but he said nothing. Sometimes I caught him watching me across the hallway like he wanted to say something and couldn't find the shape of the words. One night, he stood in the doorway of the guest room. I was sketching not anything special, just lines, loops, shadows that didn't resemble much of anything. He cleared his throat. You drawing again? I nodded. I used to love watching you draw. I used to love doing it. We didn't speak again. I didn't invite him in. A few days later, I passed him on the stairs. He was holding his phone, whispering into it, thumb pressed tightly over the speaker, like he didn't want the walls to hear. He paused when he saw me, said, I'll call you back then, slipped it into his pocket. I didn't ask who it was. He didn't offer. We had devolved into a silent civility, polite strangers sharing coffee and oxygen. Marin texted once during that week, just a single message. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. The day after, I cleaned out the old linen closet in the guest room. Found a box I hadn't opened since we moved in, art supplies, dried out paint tubes, a few photos from college. One of them was of me and Joel. He had his arm around my shoulder, and we both looked so stupidly young. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't put it back in the box either. I tucked it behind the bookshelf, out of sight. That night, I lit the candle again. It was down to its last inch. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched it burn, my fingers curled around the frame of the old sketchbook I hadn't touched since the second miscarriage. I opened it slowly. The pages smelled like dust and time. Inside were soft pencil lines, unfinished portraits, fragments of people I used to imagine. Some of them looked vaguely like children, others like ghosts. I didn't try to make sense of them. I just turned page after page until I found a blank one. Then I picked up a pencil and started drawing again. Not people, not faces, just a room. The guest room as it was now, mine. The corner lamp, the undone bed, the stub of a candle glowing on the sill. I drew it as I saw it, not perfect, not romantic, just true. And as I shaded in the folds of the curtain, something in my chest loosened. Not forgiveness, not closure, just space. A breath where before there was only holding. It came to me suddenly. A Thursday. Gray sky, colder than August had any right to be. I was changing the sheets in the guest room when I opened the hall closet and saw it Joel's blue flannel shirt. Folded. Placed neatly on top of a stack of old towels. I hadn't seen it in weeks. I picked it up, held it in both hands. The fabric was still soft, still smelled faintly of cedar and him. He used to wear it on Sunday mornings, brewing coffee, reading the news out loud, like he thought it made him sound smarter. I loved that shirt once. I stood in the doorway staring at it. Then something in me broke. Not a snap, more like a quiet rupture, a seam long overstrained, finally giving way. I didn't scream. I didn't throw it. I folded every single shirt of his I could find. Every t-shirt, every sweater, every pair of jeans. I stacked them in a cardboard box I dragged from the garage. Methodical, mechanical, his favorite college hoodie, the faded one with the cigarette burn on the sleeve, in it went. His leather belt, folded it tight, placed it on top like a bow. Then I dragged the box to the porch and left it there. No note, no explanation. When I stepped back inside, the air felt sharper, lighter. I lit the candle, the new one I'd bought that morning, vanilla and sandalwood, warmer than the last. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my notebook, and I made a list, not of names, not of wrongs, of every time I swallowed my pain so Joel wouldn't feel guilty. Every holiday we spent with his family, even though mine was closer. Every time I sat through conversations about other people's children nodding like I wasn't dying inside. Every month I bought ovulation tests and tucked the wrappers deep in the trash so he wouldn't feel pressured. Every night I lay next to him pretending not to notice he didn't reach for me. The list got long, fast. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it in recognition of how far I'd gone to protect him from my grief, of how I'd abandoned myself in the process. Around 3 p.m, the door creaked open. Joel stepped inside, a grocery bag in one hand, keys in the other. He stopped when he saw the box. His eyes narrowed. "What's this?" "Your things," I said. He looked at me like I'd spoken another language. "Why? Because they don't belong in my space anymore?" He blinked like he couldn't process it. "We're still married." I nodded. "Technically. You're being dramatic?" "No," I said. "I was being dramatic when I spent years pretending this was something worth saving. This is just clarity." He walked past me into the living room. I didn't follow. That night, he didn't sleep on the couch. He went back to the bedroom, and I stayed where I was wrapped in a blanket in the guest bed, candle burning low, sketchbook open on my lap. I drew again. This time a match, a tiny flame, delicate, but capable of burning the whole world down. The next morning, the box was gone from the porch. He didn't mention it. Neither did I. I wasn't looking for it. The guest bathroom trash had filled up again, and I was pulling the bag out, tying it with one hand, while balancing my sketchbook in the other. A corner of something caught my eye, white paper, glossy, curled slightly at the edges. I reached in and unfolded it. It was an ultrasound photo. Black and white. Fuzzy. That ghost-like outline, unmistakable, even to someone who'd never had a child. Someone had written in blue ink on the back, 19 weeks, little bean. No date. No name. Just that. But I knew. I stood there, the garbage bag still half-tied, the candle on the windowsill flickering behind me. I turned the photo over again, looked at it closer. The baby looked like all ultrasounds look, vague, alien forming. But there was a hand. One perfect curled hand near the head. I sank onto the closed toilet seat, holding it between my fingers like a relic. Joel must have brought it home. He must have been proud. Or conflicted. Or both. And then, at some point, he must have thrown it away. Or maybe it was never meant for him. Maybe Marin gave it to him and he didn't know what to do with it. But what haunted me wasn't just that he had it. It was that he left it here. In our house. In my space. Buried in a bathroom trash can like it was just another receipt or used tissue. I thought about the last ultrasound photo I'd ever held. It was mine. A blip. That's what the doctor called it. I kept it in my wallet for 2 years after the first miscarriage. Tucked behind my driver's license, like maybe someday I'd take it out and show someone. I threw it away the day after the second loss. Not because I stopped caring, but because looking at it made me feel like a failed promise. But this one, this new photo, wasn't a promise broken. It was a seed that had taken root, and it didn't belong to me. I placed the photo on the bathroom counter, smoothed it flat. Then I walked to the kitchen, found an envelope in the junk drawer, slipped the ultrasound inside, sealed it. No name, no return address, just a blank front. I left it on the dining room table. Joel would find it eventually. I didn't want to hear what he'd say. I didn't need more stammering, more I didn't mean for this, or I didn't know how to tell you. I just wanted it out of the trash. I wanted it to be seen. That night, he didn't come home for dinner. No call, no message. When I peeked into the bedroom around midnight, the bed was untouched. The envelope was still on the table, unopened. I went back to the guest room, lit the candle, watched the way its glow reached across the walls. I didn't draw that night. I just sat in the silence, holding my knees to my chest. I wasn't angry. I wasn't numb. I was something else now. A kind of clarity that didn't burn, it froze. Not cold like cruelty. Cold like peace. When I woke in the morning, the envelope was gone. Joel was gone too. And the trash can had been emptied. They called me at 3:42 a.m. The vibration of the phone against the nightstand jolted me awake. My first thought was Joel. Maybe an accident, maybe something final. But it was Marin's name that lit up the screen. The second ring came with a text. She's in labor. She's asking for you. The she wasn't even Marin. It was our cousin Dana, likely half asleep at the nurse's station. I stared at the message, letting the words sink through layers of sleep and old grief. The candle had burned down again. Just a wax ring on the sill. I got up. Not because I wanted to. Not because I forgave. But because my name was still in her mouth. Somewhere in that sterile delivery room, she'd said it. and I needed to know why. The hospital parking lot was quiet when I pulled in, washed in blue-gray from the security lights. I sat in the car for a minute before walking inside. A nurse at the front desk greeted me without surprise. "You're her sister?" I almost corrected her. Almost said, "Not anymore." But I nodded. "She's at 6 centimeters, she said. Doing okay. Bit anxious. She keeps asking for you." I followed her down the hall, each step echoing too loud. Outside the delivery room, the door was cracked just enough to let voices leak through. Joel's voice was low, soothing. Marin's was breathy, tense. "I can't do this," she said. "You can. You're doing great," Joel said. I didn't step inside. I stood there inches from the threshold, listening. I could picture him beside her, brushing her hair back, holding her hand, whispering all the things he never said to me during my losses. I imagined her fingers wrapped around his. The same hands that had once held mine while I bled. It wasn't jealousy that took root. Not exactly. It was something older. Something quieter. I thought about how many nights I'd begged the universe for that exact scene, for him to be beside me, for my body to not betray me for a family. And now, it was unfolding without me. My name was still written on the family tree, but the branch had split. I backed away from the door. I didn't open it. Didn't say a word. I walked down the hall, past the nurse's station, past a vending machine humming softly under the fluorescence. In the lobby, a woman sat asleep in a chair, a newborn carrier at her feet. The baby was wrapped in a green blanket. I slowed for half a second, just long enough to look. It was sleeping. Mouth, slightly open, hands balled into fists. I kept walking. Outside, the sky was turning violet, the first hint of morning sliding under the edge of the horizon. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before starting the engine. Then I drove. Not home. Not yet. I pulled off at a small overlook on the edge of town. One of those quiet places with no sign except a weathered bench and an old plaque about the Civil War. I parked, got out, and stood at the edge. Below me, the valley was still covered in fog. Trees like silent witnesses. I breathed in deeply, let the cold air settle into my chest. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. There was nothing left in me that needed release, only space. And in that space, for the first time, I let the silence belong to me. Not the absence of words, but the presence of self. The sun was rising when I turned back to the car. The dashboard clock read 6:08. I didn't check my phone. Didn't look for updates. Didn't want to know the weight, or the name, or the shade of the newborn's eyes. That child wasn't mine to carry. Neither of them were. I didn't plan it. Not really. It wasn't one of those dramatic suitcase-by-the-door exits. There wasn't a final argument, or a slammed door, or shouting that echoed down the hall. It was quieter than that. It happened in the softest hour of the morning, just after sunrise, when the house still held its breath. I made coffee like I always did. Filled the pot halfway. Took the mug with the chipped handle, Joel's favorite once. I watched the steam rise. I drank it in silence. He wasn't home. He hadn't come home the night before. No texts, no excuses, just absence. I didn't search for answers anymore. Whatever version of himself he gave to her, it wasn't my concern. Not now. I pulled the notepad from the drawer, the one we used to write grocery lists on. My handwriting looked too neat, too calm for what it was carrying. The letter wasn't long. "Joel, I forgive you, but not in the way you want. Not in the way that invites us to rebuild something already burned. I forgive you because I have to let go, because holding this has hollowed me out. I forgive you because I can't carry the weight of what you and Marin did and also keep my own heart beating. I'm not angry, not anymore. I'm just done. Don't call. Don't come looking. This silence, it's mine now." "Lena," I signed it without a second read. I folded it in half, laid it on the kitchen table. Right in the center. No candle, no pen beside it. Just the letter, plain and still. I packed one bag. A small leather duffel I hadn't used in years. The one I took on our honeymoon. I thought about that as I placed my folded jeans inside, along with a few t-shirts, my sketchbook, a tin of pencils. I grabbed the candle from the guest room. It was burned low wax, clinging to the sides. Still smelled like sandalwood and vanilla. I tucked it gently between two sweaters. The house didn't say anything as I moved through it. I didn't take jewelry, or photo albums, or keepsakes. I left the wedding album where it was high on the shelf in the hallway collecting dust. It could sit there for the next person to decide what to do with it. I walked through each room one last time, not to say goodbye, but to feel the edges, the contours of a life I no longer belonged to. At the door, I paused. The keys felt heavy in my hand. I didn't leave them, not out of spite, but because I wasn't surrendering anything. He could change the locks if he wanted. I stepped outside. The morning air was sharp, brisk against my cheeks. The street was still sleeping. Birdsong drifted through the trees. It was the first time in weeks that I noticed sound without flinching. I didn't know where I'd go, not exactly, but I had enough to leave, enough strength, enough knowing, enough self. I slid into the driver's seat, set the bag in the passenger side, the candle in its sweater cocoon beside it. Before I pulled away, I glanced at the front window. The curtain fluttered slightly. No face, no figure, just a house standing. Still. I drove until the city thinned, until the highways opened up into two-lane roads bordered by pines and silence. I found the cabin by accident, or maybe not. It sat at the edge of a lake, barely a structure really, just enough to sleep, to sit, to breathe. I unlocked the door with the key left in the mailbox and stepped into a place that smelled like wood and rain. I set the candle on the sill, lit it. It burned steady soft. I opened my sketchbook and drew the lake first, then the trees, then nothing, just a blank space where something new might go. The lake doesn't make sound the way the ocean does. It breathes. Early in the morning before the mist lifts, you can't tell where the water ends and the air begins. It's all one surface, still and waiting. I wake early now, not because I have to, just because something in me wants to. I make coffee in a dented metal pot on the old stovetop. It tastes like smoke and calm. I sit by the window and draw with the candle lit beside me. Same ritual, different rhythm. I've been here 13 days. Long enough for the stillness to settle into my bones. Long enough for the muscles in my jaw to unclench. No one's come looking. Joel hasn't called. Marin hasn't texted. I deleted them both from my phone after the third day. Not out of anger, just because I didn't want to flinch at the sound of a name. This place has no reception anyway. I write sometimes short lines in the margins of my sketchbook. Nothing poetic, just facts. The trees move more when I'm still. My chest doesn't ache as much in the mornings. The candle burns slower when I don't rush it. I didn't come here to disappear. I came to surface. There's a dock behind the cabin. I walk to it barefoot each evening, carrying the candle like it's part of me. I sit on the edge, feet dangling, toes grazing the water. There's a silence here that doesn't punish me. It isn't the absence of something. It's the fullness of space. I used to fill silence with questions. Why didn't he choose me? Why her? What did I lack? Now I let the questions go. They rise sometimes, but they drift back down like leaves on the water. I haven't drawn a person since I arrived. Only rooms, objects, reflections. Last night, I sketched my hand holding the candle. The flame caught in the graphite delicate still. It looked like a signal. Or a promise. This morning, I found a feather on the front porch. Small gray-white. I picked it up and tucked it inside my sketchbook. A page later, I wrote, I lived through it. I walked out. I didn't shatter. The woman who drove here 2 weeks ago didn't know if she'd ever feel whole again. I'm not whole now either. But I am something else. I am intact. I am mine. And I don't need noise to prove it. This quiet belongs to me. I earned it, and I'll keep it.